I run, bike and hike a lot. I've been doing for years, and I've been searching for most of that time for the perfect action camera to take with me on all these activities. I'm yet to find one that does everything really well, which generally means I keep buying new ones and trying them out. The X4 from Insta360, I bought this myself, not sponsored, this is all me. This shows what's possible with a 360 action camera, and frankly, it's showing how far 360 cameras have come in recent years. Now, I've already been out running with the X4. More recently, I've been taking it out cycling. Now, in this video, I want to explain why the X4 makes, for me, a great cycling camera, what I love about it, and what really annoys me about it. Now, why would you use a 360 camera when you're out cycling? Well, here's how I look at it. If you're doing something where you want to focus on the activity and not worry at all about how you're filming it, then a 360 camera is perfect. You have the ability to select the shots you want and the angles you want at a later date, not whilst you're under pressure to be cycling, climbing, surfing, or whatever it is that you're doing. Now, if you're doing something where you can take your time and compose the shot and shoot it, well, you're better off with a regular action camera or even just a regular camera. I put vlogging there, for example. I don't use an X4 for general vlogging. I only do so really if I want to demonstrate the capability of it. I use a Pocket 3 or I use a Hero 12. You can compose a shot, you can adjust it and then shoot, and if you need to, you can shoot it again. However, if the moment's going to be lost forever, then using a 360 camera, in my opinion, makes much more sense because you can reframe it later on.
There's a lot of emotion at the moment about the X4, really about whether or not 8K is that important. Opinions divided. I'm in the camp that says it is, and here's my logic. When you reframe footage from a GoPro Max or from an Insta360 X4, what you're left with is approximately 1080p. With the X4, what you're left with is about 2.7K.
Now, a 1080p shot is actually close to a 2K. 2K to 2.7K isn't really that much different, but if you actually multiply out the number of pixels in the image, it's about double. So there you go, roughly it's about double. And that means I'm confident using X4 footage in these YouTube videos. The Go 3 is 2.7K, for example, and I use that in published 4K videos all the time. Now, there are a lot of features that were added or improved on X4 over X3, but in my mind, if everything else on X4 was the same as X3, that bump in resolution was already enough for me to make the upgrade from X3 to X4, because in my opinion, it's such a huge step. So a quick rundown of the specification of this camera. It does have 8K resolution at 30 frames a second. It does that through two 1/2-inch sensors behind these two lenses that are an aperture of f1.9. It has a larger, tougher touchscreen than the X3, has a significantly improved battery life over X3, it's waterproof to 33 feet, it supports some Bluetooth microphones, has a proper lens guard system that doesn't require sticky tapes or pads, has better audio recording, and really, apart from batteries, dive cases, and lens guards, just about every other existing accessory you have for the X3 or mount system that you already own will work with X4. For $499 here in the US, in the box you get the X4, you get one battery with it, you get a USB-C charging cable. I got a bunch of stickers too. And if you look in the bottom of the box, which I didn't when I first got it, you'll find a set of standard lens guards and a soft case for it too. I think it's very well built. I like the candy bar form factor of the X series of cameras. I prefer this over the GoPro Max form factor. The screen is super responsive, it's large enough and clear enough, and it works well with swipes and other movements. It's larger than the X3 one at 2.5 inches, and it's in a completely different zip code to GoPro Max, and it's made with Corning's Gorilla Glass, which apparently means it's going to be tougher. But I'm not going to test that, and I don't tend to use screen protectors. I don't believe in them, so I'm not going to test it at all. The camera responds faster to your touch or button presses than X3 did or Go 3 does, which is very welcome. I don't really have time to waste here watching and waiting for the camera to start recording or stop recording. The battery gets a stated 135 minutes of runtime, but be careful, that's at 5.7K resolution, which does mean you can compare it with the same battery life from the X3, which was maxing out at 5.7K. At 8K, the X4 is 75 minutes. So if you're shooting all day, you're definitely going to need at least one spare battery or two. Now, when you buy the batteries, the separate ones, the spare ones, they actually come with a handy dandy hard case to protect them, which makes it very easy when you're cycling to just stick it in the back of your jacket. You don't need a zip lock or anything to protect it. I like that. While out cycling with this, running at 8K at 30 frames a second, I think a battery lasted about 1 hour and then it was gone. So I did have to replace the battery a couple of times while I was out and about cycling. For cycling, I've used the camera with the bike mount, the chest mount, and the selfie stick, all coming from Insta360. I'll put links to all these mounts below. The bike mount is okay. It's made of metal, it feels solid, and has not failed on me, but it doesn't feel very reassuring when you have the selfie pole extended all the way out and the X4 mounted on the end. Alright, so I'll tell you this. When you've got the full 360 mount stuck out in front of you, it actually changes the steering behavior. Because I guess it's not just a mass, which isn't very heavy, but it's a mass on the end of the pole. So as it weaves and bobs around, it's pulling the steering wheel. So if you keep that selfie pole retracted by the thinnest two sections, it's much less sketchy. I'm going to look at other options that use two sets of clamps to secure the pole more securely. I've also used it with the GoPro carbon pole, which is a fantastic camera mount. It takes longer to set up, it uses hex wrenches to adjust and fix the pole in place, but it's very versatile and allows you to access multiple places on a bike that you wouldn't be able to with a regular selfie stick. Audio isn't bad at all, although it's much better with a separate mic. When the camera is close up to you, it's fine and good enough for using, but as soon as you extend that pole out and have the camera further away, I think the audio recorded is much less usable. So this is the first time I've used the X4 with the lens guards on. These are the standard lens guards. So these came with it. I haven't got the premium ones, and that's only because they're still back ordered and I just haven't been able to get a pair of them yet. So I got into a Reddit discussion the other day, quite a robust one, with a guy who was convinced that to get 32-bit flow audio combined with a Insta360 X4, you had to use time codes. When you're cycling, you're going to get a lot of wind noise, whether it's windy outside or not, just because of your movement. The Insta360 wind muffs that are available will help to reduce that wind noise, but then we're back to using adhesive sticky pads again to stick them on. No thanks, I don't want to do that. However, for most action footage situations, you're not really going to want an audio track of you talking anyway, unless you're making a YouTube specific video. I generally don't use the audio straight from action cameras like this. I usually use a separate recorder and then sync it up in post, particularly for things like cycling or hiking. The best performance was with the DJI Wireless Mic 2, recording in 32-bit float and then boosted in Final Cut Pro. For some of these shots, I've used the standard lens guards. That's the ones that came with the X4 camera. And for me, I would say for the amount I'm going to use them, I think these are good enough. I usually avoid using any form of lens guard, particularly for 360 cameras. No matter what the marketing tells you from any company, they will always degrade the image quality. You will get dust, scratches, flare, and so on. But if you're in a risky situation, I prefer to have my lens at least slightly protected. I do like the fact they lock in place securely now without any sticky stuff to mess around with. The premium ones are made of glass, which you'd expect would make them better than the plastic ones, and I guess they're going to scratch less. But I actually see more reflections with the glass ones than I do with the plastic ones. The glass ones are larger, bigger diameter, and I'm not sure if that's the reason for it, but I actually prefer the look coming out of the plastic ones. Now, I noticed some flare in these shots, and not just when I'm using the lens guards, although it is more visible when I'm using them. There are two options I see here to try and minimize or reduce this flare that I'm seeing. One, you can film in bright light that doesn't have direct sunlight, but that's not really something you can usually control unless you're trying to make a promotional video for the product to promote how good it is. If you're just capturing your ride or whatever else you're doing, the weather's going to be what the weather's going to be, so there's not much you can do about that. The other option is you rotate the camera, so at the side of the camera, is facing the light source, in this case, the sun. Now, I didn't do that on these shots. You can see here there's a clear difference between the lens flare facing the sun and the one that is shaded by the camera body shooting underneath. And you can see that very clear line between the two of them. Now, rotating the camera this way, that's not going to remove the flare, but it does make the transition between the two lenses less obvious than it was the way that I did it. Now, there are some downsides to this camera, but I think the majority of the downsides that I would really say kind of relate more to all 360 cameras and not just the X4. Firstly, those lenses are very prominent, and that puts them at risk. When you're filming with X4 as an action camera, all 360 cameras have this, so it's nothing specific about X4, but you just always got to be super careful with those lenses. The second thing is there's an awful lot of work you have to do in post-production to reframe that footage afterwards. Now, until you do it for yourself, it's very difficult to get your head around this. There's lots and lots of promotional videos here on YouTube that make it look super, super easy. And there's no question, as apps improve and the software on a Mac or a PC improves as well, it is getting easier and easier to do it. But it's still a lot of work and it's still a slow process. Okay, so those are not really complaints about X4 specifically. They really relate to all 360 cameras today. There is one thing that bugs the heck out of me with this camera. There is no haptic feedback. Now, X3 had haptic feedback. Every time you touch the screen, you'd feel a little vibration. Every time you press a button, like to press record, to start recording, to stop recording, you get a little bit of haptic feedback that tells you you've done that. I don't need to look for an LED or something on the screen that tells me what's happening. I don't want to be doing that because I'm cycling or running or something else. Now, this is annoying, but I don't think it's a reason why you should not buy X4. This is not as bad as GoPro removing GPS from the Hero 12, which frankly I think was completely unforgivable, but it does feel like a similar tactic to reduce costs. I haven't really come across any other annoyances or negatives about this camera, and I've been using it quite a bit in the last month or so. I think Insta360 have really come up with a pretty awesome device, and it's not the first time they've done that either. So I will be doing some more cycling videos with X4. If there's any particular angle you want to see, let me know and I'll try and figure out how to do that. I'll be doing some running stuff too. One thing I haven't tried is I haven't tried the bullet time handle while cycling. That just feels a little bit too, yeah. My name is Julian. If I can run with it, bike with it, hike with it, or film with it, I'm going to make videos about it and put them here on YouTube. If that's of interest to you, please do like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. As always, thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon.